Thank you, Saitya. How power has been concentrated in few hands, and then Hannah Arendt started saying that why, even if after concentrating power in one hands, how it is going to get into a totalitarian state or no one can question the state. So they started about speaking about power. They started speaking about the so-called what exactly can people do during this time, how they are not fighting against the state. So they used to discuss these things. So this is how the thing has evolved. So this is how the subject has evolved over a period of time. So this is about these thinkers, the nine thinkers, and if you look at these nine thinkers, everyone has their own perspective of political thought. If Plato and Aristotle, Plato has his own domain that is called the death of his teacher called Socrates. Aristotle, he was very close to Plato on one side, his teacher was Plato, and his disciple was Alexander the Great. So he was situated in one set of ideology, or he was situated in one set of space which was more realistic than the so-called Plato, who was very idealistic because his guru or his teacher Socrates was an idealist person. And then Machiavelli was born during the very turbulent times of his time of Italy. As a result, he has observed why his state is not to his expected level, and he has given his theory called the prince should be free from ethics, the prince should be free from the so-called morals and religion. Rather, his religion or his ethics is to protect the people's life. And then Hobbes' law were the products of capitalism, who started saying that you have to go ahead and you have to protect the people's right. With this people's right, capitalism started growing over a period of time. And then John Stuart Mill said that about creativity, and he said that people should not only be having right to work, but they should be having right to freedom, where they can enjoy some creative knowledge. So that is what John Mill's concept is. And then to challenge capitalism, there is one more thinker called Karl Marx, and he has proposed that it is not capitalism, state is functioning for the capitalism as a result. As long as the state exists, capitalists exist, as long as capitalism exists, there will be continuous exploitation on the so-called workers. As a result, what the thing has to be done, they have to take away or they have to fight against the capitalists. Now, that fight has to be very blooded revolution, and that is the philosophy of Marxism. In equal context, Gandhiji also criticizes the existence of the state, but he has said that state should be replaced not with blood, but it should be replaced with peace. That is what concept of Gandhiji is again. That is the reason why they will ask what is the difference between Marxism and Gandhism as such. This is again something like Indian political thought, as I said during the times of Kautilya versus Machiavelli. Now, apart from this, why Karl Marx is not being successful was studied by Gramsci, and he has given one thing that is called the theory of the theory of hegemon, how hegemons are controlling this, or what is the assent, how they are gaining that assent from different people. As long as people is giving their assent, it is impossible for the people to revolt against the capitalists. Now, Hannah Arendt, her context or text is totally different. What is her context or text? She has been a thinker of the so-called Hitler times. As a result, Western political thought of Hannah Arendt has been rotated around the so-called their time and space. So she has spoken about totalitarian regime. So this is how the political thought started coming out from the domains of philosophy, religion, realism, then liberalism. Hobbes, Locke, they were liberals. No liberalism, and then they spoke about Marxism, they spoke about capitalism, they spoke about socialism, and they spoke about totalitarianism. This is how the thoughts of the people started giving directions to new forms of ideas. And as people started studying these ideas, studying of ideas is called ideology, right? Ideology. This ideology, ology means study. I said it long back. Ology means study. Ideology is study of ideas. Now, this ideas has been propounded by these thinkers. Once you look at these people have propounded their ideas depending upon the so-called time. Look at their time, look at their context in which they are speaking. By looking at their surroundings, they have said this ideology. As a result, there was this thing I said in the empirical approach to political theory. I said clearly that these people, they observed the surroundings and then they propounded their ideas. As a result, empirical approach is as old as normative approach, because they have seen whatever the thinkers that we have seen, right? All these have studied the surroundings, observe the surroundings which is happening around them, and then they propounded their theories. As this is based on some observation or something called facts, imperialism started growing, or empirical approach to political theory started growing. But empirical theory is not a new thing, but it is as old as the so-called normative theory, right? This is how the subject evolved, or Western political thought evolved. From this dimension itself, you had various things like how the state started growing and how other philosophies started growing in the country. So this is the syllabus that I was speaking about. Now look at this concept. We have Western political thought. These are the thinkers, and this is how one thing called political ideology started coming out. Liberalism, I said, liberalism is a direct product of the so-called liberal thinkers like Locke, um, John Locke, Thomas Hobbes, J.J. Rousseau, J.S. Mill. These people started thinking about it. Socialism is a byproduct of Marxism. Fascism is a byproduct of Marxism. So another thing is socialism started having a basic tenant from Marxism. Other schools like socialism has started, other schools like fascism has started, but Marxism was started by thinker like Karl Marx. By understanding Karl Marx, you'll understand how exactly this ideology called Marxism developed. From Marxism, how ideology called socialism and fascism developed. From Gandhian philosophy, you study Gandhiism, because they have given here, because as we are studying Marx, we have to know what exactly Gandhi's philosophy about state is and how Karl Marx and Gandhi differed, though they have agreed that state is a violent nature or state doesn't have any soul, hence state should be abolished, but the way or their approach to abolish the state is quite different. And this is feminism, a new strata of thinking, right? They said that all the political ideologies has been propounded by men, and they are saying that men used to dominate this. As a result, female people or women are facing the problems. The reason is these ideologies were propounded by men. As a result, state works for men. As a result, the exploitation of women continues in the society. Hence, they propounded that you should go for analyzing the state from the views of women in the society. This is how the subject is related. So, ideologies, I said ideology. Ology is study of the things, right? Ology is study. What you are studying here, you are studying the ideas. Studying of ideas is called ideology. And these ideas didn't come from sky, rather, they came as a product of thinkers. Few people have thought about it and then they propounded those ideas, right? All the nine philosophers whom we have seen in the Western political thought, they have propounded the ideas out of their thought. That is the reason why political thought has given rise to the so-called political ideology. In the Western political thought itself, the concepts like, look at this, theories of state emerge now. What exactly the state should be? Is it the divine theory of states like Plato and the so-called Aristotle? They gave the concept of divine theory of rights, state. They accepted to divine theory of state. the king is directly the descendant of, right, the Lord. Slowly, this divine theory of rights was challenged, and then secular nature of the state emerged by Machiavelli. From secular nature, they wanted to make it more concise. As a result, they started speaking about liberal state, saying that state is a byproduct of the contract among the people. As a result, king has come. So they gave the concept of liberal state. And then liberal state was facing some problems. As a result, they gave new concept called neoliberal state. They have fine-tuned the liberal tunings, and then they have said that neoliberal is there. Then Marxism has said Marxism totally opposes the state because state is functioning for the capitalism. As a result, he said that state should go away, and it should give rise to one more new organ called stateless society. This is what theory of state of Karl Marx is, which is again you can study from liberal school, you can study from Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, whereas Marxism you study from Karl Marx. Then pluralistic state is something which is speaking about the so-called state is getting. This is somewhere called Gramsci's concept comes. Gramsci said that people are giving consent, and people are capitalism is getting consent by the people. As a result, Marxism is not gaining traction. As a result, she said that she has absorbed the power, and she said that power is not just concentrated in few hands, rather it was pluralistic, which means it was present in many sections, not just in the government, but even some people are holding, a group of people are holding this power. So she started speaking about that pluralism, right? And Arendt also said the same thing. They started speaking about pluralism. After this, by second century or by second half of the 2000, what happened? They have post-colonial world by 1950s. Western political thought has been rejected by colonies because this thought has been given by the Western people, which is not reflecting the ideas of the Eastern people. As a result, post-colonial states emerged. The requirements of these states was quite different from the so-called capitalistic states which existed through the Industrial Revolution until 1950s. As a result, these thinkers they started studying state from their own perspective, and this is called post-colonial states. Even feminists are also didn't liking the ideology of of uh, political scientists because it was male dominated. That is the reason why feminism is having or feminists are having some drawbacks, or feminism is having some loopholes. As a result, they started coming out and propounding their own theories. So, post-colonial state, feminist state, you can consider as critical schools. Critical in the sense they were very critical of the existing system, they were very critical of the existing thinkers. This is how theories of state again emerged from the so called Western political thought. Then, right from Plato, they studied about what is justice because I said Plato was very much moved by the injustice that was meted out to the so called his guru, right? Socrates. He said that the death of Socrates was injustice. Now he said that in order to create justice in the society, what should be there? The state has to be very ruled by very wise man. So justice is the cardinal principle around which these thinkers will be there. And it started. It is not a new concept, but the concept exists as old as Plato. Plato has studied what is justice. Aristotle has given what is justice. Machiavelli has said what is justice. Hobbes, Locke, they have said their own views of justice. And famous or the latest development in this justice is Rawls. There was one person called John Rawls, and based on his theory, he has propounded one more justice. But that doesn't mean that the concept of justice is a very new thing, but justice existed from day one with the death of Socrates itself, because the death of Socrates was done in an injustice manner. As a result, people or thinkers started saying that why justice is not made it to the people. Then third, about equality. Again, this is as old as Plato or as old as Aristotle. Aristotle clearly said that if there is no equality, if there is no equality, people will get offended or people will get dissatisfied, and slowly, in a dissatisfied state, revolution starts. Hence, Aristotle is the person who started saying that you consider everyone equal as a result, or ensure that there is equality in the society, otherwise, you have to face the wrath of the people, and violence is going to occur in the state. This is how Aristotle started laying foundations for equality. From that day onwards, equality started coming out. In each and every political thinker, you'll study about their concepts of justice, their concepts of equality. Now, rights, again, they said that I said rights was confined under divine theory of state to the king itself, but there were no rights for the people. Right? It used to be like Bahubali 1 movie under Rana. Now, then Bahubali 2 comes, that is called The Rights comes with Thomas Hobbes' Locke, because they were capitalist thinkers and they favor individual rights. As long as individual is having right to life, capitalism cannot survive. As long as individual is having right to property, capitalism cannot survive. As a result, they started speaking about rights, right? The concept of rights emerged slowly from that dimension. Democracy, which is directly giving power to the people, is challenging the so called divine theory of state and saying that democracy is the people's rule. Why they said again Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, to show that capitalism is existing. Right? This is what we have said. So concept of democracy and rights has emerged by this point of time. The most important thing next one is concept of power. Look at this. I said how power is being organized or why people are unable to so-called question Hitler because Hitler is having unlimited power. He is the totalitarian in his state. Gramsci, he said that how the so-called uh, capitalism was existing its own nature because they were holding hegemony. So Gramsci said this, Hannah Arendt said this. They are holding hegemony. As a result, no one is questioning. Now, in order to gain that hegemony, ideology is playing a crucial role. Hence, let's tackle with that ideology first. Their idea is ideology is backing that hegemony. And through this, they are gaining legitimacy. They used to say this. So, the concept of power, power is a hegemon ideology, and legitimacy are playing crucial roles in determining the power. This is how the entire syllabus is linked with political thinkers. So, power, democracy, uh, rights, equality, justice, theory of state, they are all emerged from the thinkers, right? This is what the point is. So my point here is how the syllabus has emerged as such, right? It emerged from the thoughts of political thinkers. Now, now the next thing is my point to say is once you understand Western political thought clearly about each and every thinker, the rest of the syllabus is going to be linked there itself, right? This is how the subject is related. This is how the subject is being studied in the overall dimension. If you understand Plato, Aristotle, you understand justice, you understand theory of their states, so that will go parallel. That is the reason when we take a thinker, we study them holistically. Once we study them holistically, the rest of the sections are going to be very, very easy. It is not going to take much time. That is the reason why Western political thought takes some time to complete the syllabus. Then comes to the Indian political thought. Basically, in India, there was no that political thought unlike the West. But writing UPSC and thinking about only Western political thoughts is somewhat not liked by people. As a result, they had to include Indian political thought. They had included M.N. Roy, Ambedkar, Aurobindo Ghosh, M.K. Gandhi, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. They didn't give much political thought at all. Unlike the West, Indians didn't give much concepts to the political thought except Kautilya. There is no other Indian political thinker who has studied about the state as extensively as the West has done, right? So anyhow, you should have, this is UPSC. As a result, you should have some Western Indian political thinkers also. So they gave these thinkers, irrespective of whether that is statecraft or not, you have to study. Look at Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. He didn't propose any political thought. Why? But why it is there? You want one Muslim scholar to be present along with other scholars to show that we are maintaining equality, right, among all the religions. This is something, but Indian political thought has not given much relevance to the politics, unlike the West, right? So this is something which can be studied in its own individual domain. It won't take much time like Western political thought also. The only person is Kautilya, who has gave a fine analysis just like the West, right? This is how the entire syllabus is present. Now, the next concept is the next concept is whenever we study about a thinker, what we are going to study from his perspective. We are going to study what is the purpose of the thinker first of all. What exactly is the purpose of that thinker? Or what exactly is the concern of that thinker? This is the first thing that we have to analyze the thinker. Then every thinker, I said, he is a product of his times and space, in which area he was born, in which time he was born. If Plato was born somewhere around or not in Greece, where Socrates was died, then Plato wouldn't have given his theory. If he was not born at the times of so-called Socrates, who knows, Plato wouldn't have come. So every thinker is a product of his time and space. As a result, you have to, whenever we are thinking about thinkers, we should know their time and space because time and space always has their impact on the thinking of the people. So once you understand the time and space of the people, it is going to help to understand the context on which they are speaking. ఏ context లో మాట్లాడుతున్నారో you'll understand that. And this is very important to understand a thinker. Third one is what school of thought they have propounded. School of thought, whether they are liberals, they are idealists, realists, Marxists. Schools of thought are also known as perspective of thinker. In which perspective they are thinking, in which school of thought they are thinking. Such as Marx is a socialist. Marx is a socialist. Plato is idealist. So this is called perspective. Next one is, in order to prove their ideology, what is the methodology that they have adopted? Methodology. For example, Gandhi adapted experiment, my experiments with truth. Right? He used methodology called experiments. And every thinker is not only a product of time and space, but they are also influenced by few people. You have to look at their influences, who has influenced them, who influenced them. So influences you have to study on the thinker. Now, what exactly are their ideas or key ideas that they proposed? Ideas proposed, key ideas proposed, right? Next, what is their key statements? Any statements that they made extensively, you have to by heart that statement like quotations. Next one is always there exists criticism, critiques of thinkers. Every thinker will have his share of contribution and his share of critics, right? And then how you can place their contribution in Western theory, this is what you study when it comes to the so-called thinkers. So whenever it comes to the thinkers, how you should always worry is how you should always see the thinker is every thinker will be having a purpose or will be having an ultimate goal. Every thinker will have an ultimate goal. What is that ultimate goal? You have to study that. The second thing is every thinker proposes theory not just out of thin air, but by looking at his times and space, they are going to propose the theory and they have their own influences. They have their own influences. Right? You have to study who influences the thinker, time, space, and if there are any influences. Now, what exactly is their perspective? And what exactly is their methodology to prove their point? You have to study that. And what are the key ideas that they have proposed? And if there is any key statement that they propose, you should know it. And then critiques of thinkers, if there is anyone who criticizes them, and then where can you place their contribution in the Western political thought or in the politics of altogether? These are the things that we have to study about every thinker, and then the subject is going to be over. Now let me quickly go back to the point of discussion. Look at this evolution of Western political thought, classical to modern, which means they are asking from the times of Plato to the times of Hannah Arendt, how it evolved, right? What I said just exactly. It was in the school of, it emerged like philosophy, now it has come to realism. Look at the question. J.S. Mill, I said he is the person who has expanded the so-called, J.S. Mill comes here, after Locke, who has expanded the so-called concepts of liberty. That is why he has given the concept of democracy. Right? In a democracy, women should have rights. You should have liberty to speak. So, J.S. Mill is rotated like a liberal, and his concept is here. When it comes to Aristotle, Aristotle has criticized Plato's ideas. He has classified the so-called constitution. He spoke about equality. He spoke about revolution, and he spoke about modern democracies. So these are the ideas that they have proposed. Karl Marx, again, I said yesterday itself, he rotates around class, concept of class, workers, owners, human nature, alienation, capitalism, state, exploitation. So he's rotating around that. Machiavelli, secularism concept, right? Gramsci, hegemony, how they are able to exist hegemony, right? How capitalism existed is hegemony because there is organization of consent. Hegemons were very successful in getting this consent. As a result, they have that. Then Hannah Arendt said that how totalitarians exist, what is the role of ideology that is breaking in, and how power is getting concentrated in few hands, and she started saying about this. Then John Locke, father of liberalism, right? This is how the subjects have been asked. And Thomas Hobbes, the first person to speak about liberals, covenants without words, and Plato. So this is how the thinkers have been rotated. Thinkers have given their own set of ideas. I hope you got an idea now. So what is the point that I wanted to say is this is how the linkage is there. This is how liberalism is. This is how other ideologies have come. This is how other concepts of Section A has come. Now what I will be doing is from tomorrow I'll be starting with the first political thinker called Plato, right? And then we'll be discussing about his ideology, how he has proposed it. Before starting off everything, we'll look at the previous year questions on that person, and then we'll start. Right? This is what I wanted to discuss for the day. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Otherwise, I'll wind it up. The books that you have to refer for this is you can refer the so-called Western Political Thought by Andrew Haywood. But don't need to start with this. Start with the basic book that I have said already to you people. Right? There is one book called Shushila Ramaswamy and Subrata Mukherjee of Western Political Thoughts. You can read it, but the language will not be that lucid. You can relegate it to background. You can read it after completing of the basic analysis. The IGNO books are good for this. The so-called Tamil Nadu State History book is good for this, for basics. And then you can go for thinkers from the perspective of the so-called Andrew Haywood and Sushila Ramaswamy and Subrata Mukherjee. Right? And these are the books that you can refer. If you have any questions apart from this, you can ask me. Otherwise, I'll wind it up now. Did you get an idea about what I'm speaking?